Now, from the Columbia Basin, your local news source, this is iFIBER 1 News, presented in high definition. The #1 source for real-time local news, local sports headlines, and our very own Weather Center forecast covering the entire Columbia Basin. With your iFIBER 1 News team, reporting news in real time as it's happening. From the iFIBER Communications HD broadcast studio in Ephrata, Washington, this is iFIBER 1 News, and it starts now.
Welcome to iFIBER 1 News. I'm Cody Johnson with news from around the Columbia Basin for Wednesday, December 19th. Tonight we start off with a special report on the last meeting of the year for the Moses Lake Irrigation and Rehabilitation District. In sports, we have some news on the Gonzaga men's basketball team, the New York Jets, and the latest trades in Major League Baseball. Our spotlight story tonight is a glimpse at last night's Garden Heights Elementary School concert. And we have the latest weather forecast for the Columbia Basin from the iFIBER 1 Weather Center. Tonight we bring you a special report concerning the last meeting of the year for the Moses Lake Irrigation and Rehabilitation District. Like pretty much every other MLIRD meeting in 2012, there were plenty of heated exchanges on a multitude of issues. The biggest item on the agenda was a $360,000 land purchase proposed by Board Chair Mick Hansen. Here with an in-depth look at how that and other agenda items turned out is Ryan Lancaster.
Last night was the last special meeting before the new year for the Moses Lake Irrigation and Rehabilitation District Board, and fireworks were, as always, in full bloom. Director Ron Covey kicked things off by asking attorney Brian Eiler for his thoughts on the board's lack of past meeting minutes. Eiler was hired by District Attorney Harold Moberg and has apparently taken the lead on several district issues.
When we try to take action here, we're trying to go by memory alone as to what was enacted maybe at a July meeting that might have bearing on a discussion topic this evening.
In response to Covey's concerns and at several other points during the meeting, Eiler said he didn't feel comfortable dispensing legal advice in a public forum. He did, however, dispense a lot of, in his words, common sense information.
It's just obvious that this is a matter that needs to be corrected, so the board, when it acts, can act with full knowledge of what's happened before.
The lack of meeting minutes turned out to be a reoccurring theme of the night, starting with a long argument surrounding a land purchase. Early this month, Board Chair Mick Hansen and Director Rich Archer approved the purchase of a $362,000 lakefront lot on Marina Drive. They'd like to see it house a permanent MLIRD office and serve as a launch point into the lake. Covey voted against the purchase, saying he wanted to see further study of the lot before buying it. Last night, Hansen asked for the authority to finalize the purchase, but Eiler said several contingency items were lacking from the original resolution, including anticipated development costs to be paid to the city of Moses Lake.
If the board chooses to waive that contingency, that means that MLIRD is taking the risk that the costs related to requirements of the city of Moses Lake are going to be excessive. So that's not stated in this prior resolution from the last meeting. Is there a different resolution that says that?
No.
Archer made a motion to waive the contingency requirement, but Covey maintained the board should find out what kind of costs they might be facing from the city before buying the land. Covey also pointed out the parcel was assessed by the county at $104,000, far below the proposed purchase price.
So I've got a number of concerns that I don't think have been addressed appropriately, simply because you want to get this thing pushed through.
When you say that there's been a value put on it by the county, well, there's a lot of things out there that have values put on it by the county that I'd love to be able to buy it at that price. You don't use the county's assessed rate as your appraisal. You have an appraiser come out and they do the research, they spend the time on it, and they do everything, and that is what we're using for the number. Rich, do you have any discussion?
Well, again, I don't want to give my legal opinions in an open public meeting. I will say that the board undoubtedly has authority to purchase real property. The board is obligated to not pay more than fair market value. The county assessor is supposed to, under the law, assess the property at its fair market value. Therefore, there should be some pretty convincing explanation, I would think, before I would want to vote as a board member to spend 2.5 times the assessed value. And
Hansen said the purchase price is based on a private appraisal of the property, although it was noted he chose the appraiser without board input. Covey also pointed out the contract has a number of addendums made by Hansen this month that were never brought before the board for approval.
I don't know where you have the authority to make these changes, initial them, without bringing them back to the board for approval. And this was not done.
Obviously I did.
Hansen asserted he did have board approval to make the changes, but Secretary to the board Nina Zeller said she doesn't recollect that vote.
Since I've been here taking notes and listening to the audio, there has been nothing set forth that addresses the changes on the contract.
we've got 2 different board members that remember it different ways. We've got the secretary of the board saying that the modifications that were executed here in December were not voted on by the board during her tenure since October. So, again, not providing legal advice, but it seems to me that it would be awful risky to be taking action when you don't know and there's a substantial disagreement as to what action has already occurred.
Ratepayers in the audience also piped up on the issue.
Until the minutes are available for review, I suggest everything be tabled because we're going to be affected by this.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
anyone that hires an attorney and doesn't take his advice is a fool for his own client.
Archer eventually withdrew his motion to waive the development cost contingency, and the land purchase was set aside until the new year.
I think we are going to have to go back and take a look at this again, probably reapprove it.
Well,
Yes.
Thank you.
And the land purchase was far from the only item on the agenda Tuesday night. A quick rundown of other issues for you. Hundreds of notices were recently mailed to people on a county list of ratepayers who are potentially entitled to a tax refund from the MLIRD. But actual refunds aren't being given out at this time. District General Manager Kirk Carpenter said the notices didn't originate from his office, and more research needs to be done before he can be sure the people on the list were in fact wrongfully assessed MLIRD taxes. Hansen hired 4 girls to help him send out the mailers, which included a copy of an MLIRD resolution regarding assessment refunds and tax information the district received from the county. Eiler and others told Hansen last night he didn't have the authority to mail the notices. Eiler also informed Hansen he legally should have retained a copy of everything he mailed out, as they can be considered public records. Hansen proposed hiring an outside consultant to start verifying who is and who isn't entitled to a refund. Carpenter said he'd write up a proposal and look into the cost. Hansen also raised the issue of hundreds of ballots that were thrown out during the recent MLIRD election, saying he's concerned instructions were confusing and may have violated a state law that says ballot-containing envelopes must be unmarked. Hansen directed Eiler to ask the state attorney general to clarify the issue. Hansen said he'd like to hold another special meeting the first week of the new year. For iFIBER 1 News, this is Ryan Lancaster reporting.
That's one reason I do not get into politics. All joking aside, we want to thank Ryan Lancaster for putting that together for us. And stay tuned, we're going to be right back after this.